All right, welcome to the next session. We're going to continue building this sort list procedure. We just left off building the logic, the if statement, that checked for the user input based on what the user supplied, and then sorting the list appropriately based on that value. So now I want to take this a step further because you're probably thinking to yourself right now, well, you know what, this is great, but what if the user enters a 4? Or 5, or they type ABC inside of this box? Well, what happens then? We need to be able to catch incorrect input from our users and then give our users the proper response. Hey, you entered a 4, that's not a correct sort value. You got to pick 1, 2, or 3. Would you like to try that again? So I want to provide them with some proper output as they give us information for our application. So take a look. I'm going to add to this if structure that we created in the prior session, and I'm going to introduce you to a message box. Take a look. So I'm going to jump back into my sort list procedure. I'm going to go back into my if function here, and I'm going to add to the end of my if function. We've already got if user input is equal to 1, 2, or 3, but what if they put something that doesn't exist? So here I'm going to introduce an else. This is like a catch-all. Hey, if one of these earlier 3 don't work, then do this, else. So now I'm going to say, okay, well, you know what? They didn't pick a 1, 2, or 3. They picked something else. So now I want to supply them a message that tells them what they did wrong. And this is where I'm going to bring in a message box. So before I do anything else inside my if statement, I'm going to jump back up to where I declared my user input variable. And I'm going to declare another variable here. I'm going to say dim, we'll call this try again. I want to prompt the user, tell them what they did wrong, and then ask them if they'd like to try again. Now with this variable, it's going to store an integer or a numeric value. And I'll talk about why that is here in just a moment. So it's called try again, and it's going to store an integer. So now I'm going to come back down into my else statement of my if, and I'm going to say try again is equal to a message box. Now a message box is very similar to an input box. Remember the input box earlier, prompting the user to give us some information? Well, this is a little bit different because now it's just a message that tells them something and then gives them buttons to click on, like yes, no, okay, cancel. They get some buttons. Now we can figure out which button they clicked on because the message box returns a number back to us based on the button that they chose. For example, if I give the user a yes/no button, if they click yes, the message box returns a 6 back to me. Take a look. So I'm going to say, for my prompt inside of my message box, I'll say incorrect value, try again. I'll just ask them, would you like to try again? Now, the type of message box that I want to return is going to be a yes/no. I just want to know, do you want to try again? Yes or no? So for the second argument of my message box prompt here, first I get the input or the prompt itself that I'm going to essentially ask the user a question, comma. Now I'm going to give them the button choices. And from here, this little menu, I'll pick VB yes no, Visual Basic yes no. And I'll go ahead and close the rest of the arguments for the message box prompt here. So now I've got this quick little variable here called try again, where I'm going to prompt the user for some input. Now remember, it's a yes no. Pick yes or pick no. If they pick a yes, try again now holds a number 6. If they were to choose no, the value that would get returned back to us in our variable called try again would be a number 7. So now that we know which button they pressed, we can perform the appropriate actions. So I'm going to continue here. I'm going to say, well, if try again, I'm going to do a conditional check here. If it's equal to 6, then I'll end my if. Then I'm going to allow them to try again. And the way that I'm going to have them try it again is I'm just going to recall the procedure called sort list. I'm just going to rerun it again so they can go back through all the entire steps. Put in a 1, 2, or 3 and continue going. So I'll just make a call to sort lists, and that's it. So I've got this simple little variable in there called try again. It's an integer value. I'm making that equal to a message box, prompting the user, tell them what they did wrong. Hey, incorrect value, would you like to try again? They pick yes, then we'll rerun the macro, the procedure once again. If they choose no, then it has nowhere to go, and it just completes. It gets down to the end sub, and the procedure just ends. So let's take a look at what we got here. Once again, I'll move this out of the way. I'm going to click into my sort list procedure. I'll go up and hit the play button, top of my screen. This runs my procedure, so we know if we type in a number 2. I'll hit OK. It runs. I now sorted my list by category. But let's try that again. So I'll click back into my sort lists, hit the play button, and let's say I type in a number 4, or I type in Fred, or I type in something other than 1, 2, or 3. I hit OK. And now I get the message box. Hey, incorrect value. Would you like to try again? And I hit yes. And it just reruns the procedure again. Now I can read the text. I'll type in a number 3. And there I go. I've now sorted my list by total. So we've introduced variables in there, getting input from our users. We've introduced conditional statements using if logic to detect what did the user put in and then what should I do. And we've introduced a message box, prompting the user of potential errors within the code, telling them what went wrong, and then receiving input about how they would like to continue, all through this message box. It's super slick what you can do here within Excel Visual Basic, and these really dynamic interfaces that we can supply to our users and start to automate their experience and build logic inside of this automation as well.